Welcome to the Black Anarchist podcast, a channel where critical thinkers come to learn and grow. Through pedagogical discussions, we challenge the status quo, conventional narratives, and present raw truth. I'm JC, author of Blame It on the Dress, The Manufacturing of Black Homophobia and Performative Masculinity. Today, we're going to address the latest in U.S. import tariffs. Governments always claim that tariffs protect industries and create jobs, but historical evidence consistently proves otherwise. According to a 2023 study by the Peterson Institute for International Economics, tariffs implemented between 2018 and 2020 cost American consumers and businesses approximately 80 billion annually. Tariffs are just another form of economic protectionism, punishing small businesses while leaving corporations largely untouched. As anarchists, we reject tariffs and support free market economics because government intervention primarily benefits the state and its corporate allies, not the American people. The Trump administrative tariffs implemented in 2025 represent more than just economic protectionism. They embody a system designed to keep or protect old money while preventing the creation of new wealth. This is not what an American first presidency is supposed to look like. Trump claimed he was going to move in a libertarian direction, but he is doing the exact opposite. These tariffs create significant barriers to entry, preventing everyday Americans, particularly those from historically marginalized communities, from accessing the products they need to start and grow their businesses. Research from the Brookings Institute show that Black-owned businesses are 3 times more likely to be denied loans than white-owned businesses, and these tariffs add yet another financial burden. By protecting established wealth and making it harder for new entrepreneurs to enter the market, they reinforce existing economic disparities. The system operates through economic policies that preserve the status quo and prevent the redistribution of wealth and opportunities across all communities. These tariffs will force us to buy American products even if we can't afford them. The consequence is that many of us simply won't be able to start our businesses. The administration claims that this promotes American manufacturing, but in reality, it locks out everyday entrepreneurs who rely on affordable imported materials to launch their ventures. According to the National Bureau of Economic Research, for every job potentially saved by tariffs, consumers pay an average of $817,000 annually through higher prices. When the only option is to buy expensive American-made products or abandon your business dreams altogether, we're not creating opportunity, we're suffocating it. Trump's trade tariffs are poised to ignite a global economic conflict, heightening tensions with major world economies. The US stands in a precarious position, relying heavily on its fiat currency and forced to global military dominance as its primary leverage. The data is clear. The US imports over 2.5 trillion in goods annually while exporting 1.7 trillion. In reality, we depend on other nations far more than they rely on us. If Trump disrupts the international economic order, it will be the American people who bear the brunt of the consequences. Trump claims that these tariffs will give the US leverage to force other countries to accept American imports. The reality is clear. This only benefits established corporations but does nothing for the majority of Americans struggling to make ends meet. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York estimated that previous tariffs cost the American household over 800 billion per year. I'm sorry, the average American household 830 per year. American businesses still crippled by the devastating economic aftermath of the government's authoritarian COVID response remain trapped in a cycle of financial ruin. According to the Small Business Administration, over 200,000 businesses permanently closed during the pandemic. And I'm going to call it the so-called pandemic. The lockdowns were not about public health. They were a blatant exercise in control, placing the population under de facto house arrest while the American government flooded the economy with printed money to create the illusion of stability. These very reckless policies have fueled inflation, leaving working class Americans to suffer the fallout while the ruling class evades any negative impact. Small businesses bore the brunt of these restrictions, with countless establishments shutting down their doors permanently. The 5 trillion in pandemic stimulus led to a 40-year high in inflation, yet the government continues to double down on interventionism. According to this economic instability, adding to this economic instability, Dr. Fauci was granted a pardon, an individual who should have been held accountable for his role in the mismanagement of the pandemic rather than escaping justice. As the nation grapples with this economic challenge, the consequences of misguided policies extend beyond public health and into broader financial landscape. The imposition of tariffs only compounds these issues, further straining businesses and households that are already struggling to recover. The government expects Americans to repay their student loans while simultaneously interfering with the economy and preventing us from earning a livelihood. This hypocrisy reveals the state's true priorities: extracting wealth from citizens while limiting their economic opportunity. The right to earn a livelihood is included in a right to life. One needs to earn a living in order to live. These tariffs directly impede that financial right or fundamental right by limiting access to necessary business materials and increasing costs for entrepreneurs. The American the average American carries over 37,000 in student loan debt, and 43 Americans have federal student loan debt. When the government creates barriers to entry through burdensome tariffs while still demanding repayment for education debt, it traps citizens in an impossible situation. The state creates the debt, then actively prevents people from earning enough to repay it. This cycle of economic oppression is deliberate and serves to maintain established power structures. Today, we must recognize and resist these mechanisms that keep us all financially subjugated. This will have serious consequences for everyday Americans, particularly workers, small business owners, and families struggling to make ends meet. A trade war means higher prices on everyday goods, from groceries to electronics, making it harder for working class families to afford necessities. The Bureau of Labor Statistics report that the average American household spends over 60% of their budget on essential goods, many of which are imported or contain imported components. Tariffs also threaten jobs and industries relying on international trade, as higher costs force businesses to cut wages, reduce staff, or shut down entirely. The Economic Policy Institute estimates that for every job created by tariffs, 3 are lost in other sectors. I was willing to give Trump and his tariffs a chance, but after attempting to navigate this convoluted system myself, I now know it's a complete disaster. Here's my firsthand experience. The tariffs have prevented me from getting essential products that I needed for my businesses. The most the most frustrating part is that the complete lack of transparency about costs. You must order your products first, then US Customs hold your products hostage while you pay whatever arbitrary tariffs they decide they want to impose. They never notify you when they have your products. You're just given 5 days to pay the tariffs and additional fees. If you miss that window, your items get put in storage and get eventually gets auctioned off. Your investment is completely lost. There is absolutely no way to determine tariffs in advance unless you hire an expensive custom broker. Calling U.S. Customs and Border Protection means being put on hold for hours. Emailing them gets you uh, no closer to a straight answer. This is an intentional, opaque system designed to frustrate you and ultimately discourage small business owners, particularly those without the resources and connections to uh, of established corporations. The administration has implemented the following tariff. Canada and Mexico face a 25% tariff on all imported goods with a reduced 10% tariff specifically on Canadian energy products, including crude oil and natural gas. China is subject to a 10% tariff on all imported goods. There is also a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports from all countries effective March 12, 2025. These tariffs impact imports from Canada, Mexico, and China, and all other nations supplying steel and aluminum to the U.S. Additionally, the suspension of U.S. Canada Free Trade Agreement raises questions about the stability of other longstanding trade agreements, such as the U.S. Israel Free Trade Area Implementation Act of 1985. The tariffs encompass a wide range of products. Imports from Canada and Mexico include agricultural products, automobiles, machinery, and consumer goods. Imports from China include electronics, clothing, toys, and various consumer products. Steel and aluminum imports cover raw materials and derivative products used in construction, automotive, and manufacturing industries. Notably, previous exemptions for certain products have been eliminated, applying the tariffs universally. Given the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza, Israel should be held financially responsible for its destruction and should compensate Palestinians for the land it has taken. Israel should not be given special treatment. Its policies do not benefit the U.S. and only serve to drain American resources while entangling America in endless conflicts. Israel continues to receive U.S. financial aid while pursuing military interventions that advance its own agenda rather than benefiting the American people. While Palestinian sovereignty is the ultimate goal, a more strategic approach would be to temporarily place the land under American protection rather than leaving it under Israeli control. Unlike Israel, the U.S. can be held accountable through media coverage and public scrutiny, ensuring that human rights violations do not continue to go unchecked. What many people don't realize is that when Trump took Palestine from Israel, the subtext is that he was annoyed with Benjamin Netanyahu's incompetence. Trump effectively said, "You're incompetent and America can take it from here." The only reason there was no public spectacle is because Netanyahu went along with it to save face, groveling and thanking Trump. Looking past the diplomacy, this was not a joint decision. If Benjamin Netanyahu would have put up any resistance as Zelensky had done, Trump would have had no choice but to embarrass Netanyahu just as he did to Zelensky. Small businesses and online retailers will face mounting challenges as import costs rise, forcing them to either pass expenses on to consumers or absorb the losses, which may drive out many businesses. According to the National Federation of Independent Businesses, 92% of small businesses report being negatively impacted by tariffs. Farmers and factory farmers will also be affected as retaliatory tariffs from other nations reduce demand for American made products. During the previous trade disputes, U.S. agricultural exports fell by 27 billion. Businesses might need to adjust price strategies to maintain competitiveness. Tariffs may also cause supply chain disruptions, requiring businesses to find alternative suppliers. Right now, I'm being forced to look for American suppliers, which are extremely expensive, and I may not be able to create the business that I want. I may need to find another business model. Meanwhile, I'm going to be depleted of financial resources while I'm waiting to get the products that I need. The fundamental here is statism. Government officials believe they have the right to speak on our behalf, even though they clearly don't represent our interests. With 60% of Americans oppose increasing tariffs, according to recent polling, yet the administration implements them anyway, the disconnect is obvious. They create economic policies that benefit their corporate donors while presenting them as solutions for the working people. These tariffs will not benefit the American people or protect American jobs. Instead, they will impose additional costs on consumers and small businesses while failing to address the root cause of economic disparity. Rather than taxing the American people through import tariffs, Trump should impose direct taxes on corporations that offshore American jobs, holding them accountable for prioritizing profits over domestic labor. These tariffs are a classic example of government overreach disguised as economic protectionism. Statism serves corporate interests, ensuring accountability remains out of reach. That's why real economic protection does not come from state policies or trade wars, but from sovereignty over our own labor production and markets. We must stand together, regardless of our background, to challenge these systems that keep us all economically oppressed. For those of us who refuse to play by the state's rules, adapting means creating economic alternatives, local trade networks, worker cooperatives, and independent supply chains that operate outside of government imposed restrictions. By decentralizing economic power, communities can reclaim control over their own labor and resources. The global economy is constantly evolving, and these tariffs represent yet another mechanism of state control, tightening its grip over economic freedom. Understanding these challenges is crucial, but breaking free from state control is even more urgent. Our collective liberation depends on building alternative economic systems that serve all people, not just the privileged few. Thank you for listening to the Black Anarchist podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. The struggle is real, and the fight for liberation is far from over. Get sovereign or die trying.